What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. If you guys are new here, please go down there, hit that notifications button, turn on your notifications, subscribe as well, and let me know what y'all think about these videos. I try to put one out every single Friday. Today, we are not on the water, but we are in the boathouse, and we are comparing the Lews HyperMag Gen 1 to the Lews HyperMag Gen 2. Let's roll that intro and check them out. Alright guys, here it is. It's the fall already. iCast was back in July. I showed you guys everything that was coming, all of the new stuff, all of the goodies. And this was one that I was really excited about. This is the HyperMag Gen 2. The reason why, the number one reason why I love this reel, and it's not that I'm showing favoritism or anything over my Elite TR, my Pro TR, or anything like that. But in the winter time, this thing is a huge player for me because it doesn't get cold like other reels do. So that's just a little bit of a side note. But this video, we're gonna compare these two reels. So Gen 1, we're just gonna do a side-by-side comparison real quick. Let's see here, let's throw up the specs. All right, so both of them come in a 7:5 to 1 gear ratio and an 8:3 to 1 gear ratio. They are both an 11 bearing system. They both have 20 pounds max drag. They both have the zero reverse one-way clutch bearing. The line capacity is 110 yards on both of them. The reel inches per turn has remained the same. The new Gen 2 is 0.2 ounces lighter than the Gen 1 HyperMag. The Gen 1 HyperMag comes in at 5.4 ounces, and the Gen 2 HyperMag comes in at 5.2 ounces. Is it a huge difference? No, you're probably not gonna notice it, but nonetheless, it is still lighter. Let's see here, what else do we got? All right, so as far as specs go, that's everything on the box for you guys. So let's look at the actual reels themselves. All right, so here are the two reels. Right off the bat, you can notice a frame change. We did change frames up on the Gen 2 HyperMag this year versus the Gen 1 here. The Gen 2 looks very similar to the Elite TI and the Pro TI, but still a different material so that it doesn't get super cold like the others do. Same as the Gen 1 did. You'll notice the different knobs as well. The Gen 2 has the new JDM styled wind grips versus the round knob wind grips, the traditional kind. They are still wind grips, they're still tacky with that, whatever I can't remember what wind calls it, but it's got that tackiness to it. I can't remember the name of it. But same grip to it. It's just the Gen 2 is a little bit smaller than the Gen 1 handles, or knobs, I'm sorry. Handle length is the same. The handles are identical, that carbon fiber. The Gen 1 has silver hardware versus the Gen 2 has the black hardware. Not that big of a difference. The drag stars are a hair different. The Gen 1 does not have the silver plates on it like the Gen 2 does. The Gen 2, to me, looks a little more dressed up on the drag star than the Gen 1 does. Both Gen 1 and Gen 2 has the quick line identifier, I can't remember what we call that, on the spool. You're able to turn that to tell you exactly what line is on that spool. That helps tremendously. The side plates have changed. They are, well, not necessarily the side plate, but how you open the side plate has changed. The Gen 2 is up top now, right here. You just pull down on it, versus the Gen 1 was down on the bottom like the traditional reels that we've always used. So that is a little bit different this year. The Gen 2 HyperMag has the speed knot in it. The speed knot allows you to tie a knot in your line, stick it in the speed knot, and then grab it up here, put a little tension on it, and you can wind up the line. It makes for quick spooling very easily. I like that feature a lot. The thumb bar feels very similar, but the Gen 2 thumb bar actually has some texture to it now. They have added a couple of lines in there, and that is just going to be for when your hands get wet. It gives you a little bit more traction to maybe grab a hold of that, versus the Gen 1 that was, it's got a traction pad on it, but it's not, there's no texture to it, it's just kind of smooth, but it might be just a little bit heavy plastic, a little bit of rubber, something along those lines. But either way, the Gen 2 did go up with a little bit different thumb bar there. As far as the gearing goes, the gearing is pretty much the same. Looking at the worm gears, the Gen 1 worm gear is gold. The Gen 2 worm gear is silver. And I know a lot of you guys are like, wow, this is really nitpicky stuff, but I want this to be something very in-depth for you all to be able to go back on and say, well, what is the difference between a Gen 1 and a Gen 2? You know, is the Gen 2 really that much better, or should I just stick with my Gen 1? So I want to give you as much information as I possibly can so that you can make an informed decision. From there, well, we do have the new side brake over here as well. The Gen 1 has the traditional circle dial here that you can see the entire dial. You see everything there from the free spool to 1 all the way to the 10 and the max. And then with the new Gen 2, you've got half the dial out. You can only see half of the dial, but you still have the free spool all the way to the 10 max. So it's just set up a little bit, it just looks a little bit differently, and that's because of the new frame as well. So aesthetically, personally, I love the new one better. I love the Gen 2 aesthetically. I think it looks, I think it just looks a little nicer than the Gen 1 did. Don't get me wrong, I still love my Gen 1, but the Gen 2 I feel is a little bit nicer. When palming them, I feel like the Gen 2 palms better for me personally. And that's just because of how I hold it. I know some people tell me I hold my reel weird, and I think it's just because it's my right hand, so everybody thinks it looks weird, but I don't really think it is. But I think it's a little bit, I think it fits my hand a little bit better, and that's just personal preference. Everybody kind of has their own preference as to the way they hold their reels and what they like and whatnot. But as far as performance-wise, they're really almost the same. The only major differences was a couple of different color changes on there, moving a couple of parts around. The screws are in a couple of different places. The drag star's a little different. I guess if you want to call the knobs and handles performant, I don't guess they're aesthetic. I guess they are. I would consider it performance, personally. I mean, I feel like I can grip the Gen 2 better than I can the Gen 1. But I don't know, personal opinion, I guess. And then, of course, the your actual dials over here on the side for your brakes, those have changed as well. I feel like the new Gen 2 is actually easier to use also. I'm able to just kind of put my thumb there on the side, and I don't know, I like it a little bit better. I think I can dial it easier versus with the Gen 1, you kind of got to get your fingertips down in there a lot. Not saying that it's hard, but you know, if you can't feel your fingertips when it's really cold out and whatnot, it's going to be kind of hard to get down in there versus with the Gen 2, you can just kind of take the side of your thumb and you can see how easy that moves with my thumb. So it's just little things like that in my personal opinion make a big deal, because Lews listened to what people were saying. They were paying attention to what people were saying that they may not have liked or maybe could have improved on, and they did that with the Gen 2 HyperMag. So that's a really big deal to me. I love the fact that Lews listens to their people, they listen to their customers, and they listen to their pros as well. So when something can be improved on, they improve it, and that's a huge thing for me that I really love about the HyperMag. Is there were a couple of things that could be improved, and they went out and they did it. So that's a really cool thing for me. I'm not gonna lie, I was very against the redesign at first. When Lews told me they were redesigning the HyperMag, I threw a little bit of a tizzy. I went into a child mode. I was like, that is the stupidest thing you could have told me. I think the HyperMag, the Gen 1 HyperMag, I thought was perfect. I didn't have any issues with it. I seriously thought that this was a perfect reel. And a lot of that was because of how much I use it during the winter. I loved the way that it palmed. I loved the way that the knobs felt and all that. And then my guys were like, listen, you just need to be open-minded when you go to ICAST. I was like, of course, I'm always gonna be open-minded. And when he handed it to me, I was like, oh my, I actually like this a lot. At first, I didn't think I was gonna like it better. But on day 3 of day 3 or day 4 of iCast, I can't remember which one it was. I finally convinced them to let me take it out of the case and play with it for a little while, and I went and put it on, actually the rod that it's on now, the Custom Light rods. And once I put it on there, I realized that this was going to be a huge player in my arsenal. Obviously, the new year's coming up, so I will have an entirely new arsenal here soon. And I think it's going to have a lot of the HyperMags in it. For one, the HyperMags are, and I'm not saying affordable, because I know they are a higher end reel, and a lot of people are going to disagree with me as being affordable. But when you look at what it is, when you look at the technology in it, the workhorse ability of it, that's not a word, but I'm using it as a word, what it can do, I think comes in at a great price point. I think it's a phenomenal reel for the money, and it comes in a little bit cheaper than the Pro TI and a little more cheaper than the Elite TI. And yet again, in the winter, which is what we're coming into right now, this does not freeze my hand out, and that's a big deal to me, to be able to keep my hand not necessarily warm, but just keep it from giving that blister tingling feeling. So that's the big thing for me, is the coldness and the relaxability that my hand can be able to have when I'm fishing it. So guys, there it is. This is the Gen 2 HyperMag. I'm really loving it so far, right out of the box. I fished it a little bit when I was at iCast, but out of the box, I'm loving it. We are going to spool it up. I'm going to take it out on the water probably next week, in 2 weeks. I will be throwing a Thunder Cricket on it. This is also the brand new Custom Light rod, so be on the lookout for the review video on the Custom Light rod as well. We'll be comparing the Custom Light Gen 1 to the Custom Light Gen 2, so be on the lookout for that as well. Guys, if y'all like these videos, do me a huge favor. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, turn on your notifications. That'll let you know when we post a new video every Friday. Guys, we're going to be out fishing here very, very soon. As you all know, I do have a new job with Rather Outdoors as a video producer, content producer. So videos may be kind of a little sporadic. They may not be as much on the water, as much as maybe reviews and stuff, but I'm going to try to keep that content coming for you guys. Like, comment, subscribe, notifications on. Tell me which one you like better, Gen 1, Gen 2, down there in the comments. Take care, everybody.